Hey everybody, remember a while ago when we started that Darth Vader drawing? Well, we never finished it, we're going to go ahead and do that today, so let's jump over to the art desk and get started right now. Alright, hopping in with an airbrush first. Most of the background I actually use the airbrush for. It's a new tool I have, so I'm trying to break it in and kind of see what limits I can push on it and see what kind of effects I can achieve. So we're kicking things off with the sky. I started with a really light yellow, just to kind of build up like a background lighting effect. I went ahead and added this onto the ground in a couple of spots to add that lighting as well. So after that, we're going to go ahead and hop in with a couple different shades to the sky to just really pull out some dynamic colors and sort of neat glowing effects. Because the goal here is to have something that looks kind of hazy and gross in terms of a sky. So wrapping up the yellow, like I said, on the ground here, and then we're going to go ahead and go into like a turquoise blue color. So we're going to start that off right about now, I believe. Oh, well, first I'm actually going to, knock it off the desk, because that's the key to art, is actually knocking your piece off of the desk before you paint it. It's for good luck. It's a thing. But yeah, so now kicking things off with the turquoise. I thought this would actually be a nice base layer to put the green over, because any areas that the green was left off would really pop with that blue, especially contrasting to the yellow, which obviously mixes to make green. So that was the thought process there. Whether or not it worked, you let me know, but I kind of like the way it looks. So now we're going to go ahead and add in the green, and we're just going to go ahead and add this in a little bit more sporadically than the other two. I was looking for a more even base layer with the other two. This one I want it to be a little bit more sporadic and sort of have some heavier spots and lighter spots, just so that you really get that weird, like, hazy, shady kind of sky. So that was the thought process on that. Next up here, we're going to go ahead and start basing in the sand, and I know the irony of doing a Darth Vader piece with sand in the background, but he looks pretty pissed, so that explains why. But we're going to go ahead and just use like a really nice tan color, and the nice thing about the airbrush is that you can kind of lay it on in heavier or thinner coats. So I went over with everything in a thin coat, and then I could go back in to really get some nice coloring with the same shade of tan, but get very different effects. So I literally did all of the ground with the same color of tan. It was just different spots that got it heavier and different spots that got it lighter, and ended up with something that I thought turned out pretty cool, especially for the amount of time that I had in it. I was really impressed with the way that turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up, and then I'll talk back with you guys in a second. Alright, by this point I decided that the sky was just a little bit too blue, so I went back over in with some yellow and just kind of hit a couple more spots with that highlight. This really helped pull a little bit more light into the piece, but it also made the sky have that hazier effect that I was going for, so that's what I was doing there. The next up was to go ahead and add in the laser bolt effects, and for that I went ahead and started with a base of white, just making sure that I left that overspray so that it really gets that glowing effect. So I also did the white for the smoke coming off of the crashed TIE Fighter and the crashed X-Wing. But after all of the white was done, I went in with some blue on just the edges of the white laser streaks, and I just kind of lightly sprayed those in, and then I would rub my finger over them to get that like streaking effect. Alright, so next up I grabbed some microns and then my Copics, and I actually had to go over Vader because of all of the effects that I added with the airbrush. It actually ended up overspraying onto Vader quite a bit, which looked okay for most parts, but I really wanted to pull the helmet especially back into the focal point of the piece. So especially on that eye, I wanted to make sure that that stayed really nice and dark, as I felt that was something that was very important to have for the rest of the piece actually being pretty light. So you can see me going back in with that Copic and just really hitting some of those darker shades and making sure that everything was still drawing focus and staying pretty dynamic. So that was the plan there, was just to go back in, detail a couple of those pieces back so that everything kind of looks a little bit more cohesive. Alright, at this point I decided to go in and detail the crashed TIE Fighter. So the first thing that I did here was grab my microns to outline everything, and then the rest of it, honestly, since this is such a background piece and not at all anything that I wanted in focus, I wasn't too worried about detail, so I did some light outlining on everything. And then after that I went back in with the Copics and just added some pretty heavy shading in there so that it didn't draw too much focus, but it was also very clear what the object was that was crashed. At this point I also used those Copics to shade in the smoke. So you'll see me wrap that up right now, and then we can jump into the next part. Alrighty, and now that the TIE Fighter is done, we're going to go ahead and jump into the city background and the TIE Fighters in the sky. So for the city, I just wanted to hit them very lightly with some shading, but again, this is a very background piece, so I actually wanted these to kind of blend into the sky. So you'll see I do use a micron to detail some of the heavier set shading areas, but for the most part I just used microns here, the Copics rather, so that it would really stay in the background, because I didn't want that to draw too much attention. And sort of the same deal with the TIE Fighters. The one that is closest got the most outlining, as it got the wings outlined and then the undercarriage and window. But as you got farther back on them, I believe the last one I only used Copic, just so that it really fit into the hazy sky, because again I was going with the idea that these are flying in through that heavy like fog or grime in the sky. So I wanted to make sure that they kind of stayed a little bit distorted in the background. So that was the thought process there. And you can see just hitting some of the TIE Fighters with the micron and the windows and wings. But for the most part, really low detail on this. It was more just trying to get the silhouette and shape, because as many people know with Star Wars, if you see that shape, you know exactly what you're looking at. So I didn't feel too worried about getting the detail right. But now you're just going to see that I'm going to go back in and hit some of the details on the background behind Vader, some of the scrap metal and all of that. Just detailing that up again with those microns and Copics, getting a nice weathered look, and finishing up everything there. And with that being done, everything else is just wrapping up. So I'm going to go ahead and let the rest of this play, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Alrighty, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I certainly did. It was nice getting back to that project. It's been pending for a while now, so it was good to jump back in there and finally finish that piece up. And in the end, I was really happy with the way it turned out. So, yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Next up, we have a couple videos that are potential. I did have to switch around the queue for this month a bit just due to some shipping issues with some certain things that were supposed to be here, and also some weather restrictions as it's been pretty rainy here, so painting's kind of been a no-go. But stay tuned. I got some really cool stuff coming for you. Definitely hit the notification bell, do all of the liking, commenting, subscribing, all of that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys all very soon.